Hello there, my friends. Gern Blanston on the podcast. How are you today, Gern?
Doing very well, thank you.
It's great. I'm
Happy to be
Pittsbrgh
here.
Pat, and we're going to be talking about Star Wars Andor. Boy, it's been a long time since we've done one of these, but what a great topic, huh?
Yeah, well, it's certainly generated a lot of conversation. I paid a lot of attention to it. It was getting so much online buzz. Definitely turned out to be different than the other Disney-sponsored Star Wars fair.
Yeah, there's it's funny because at first I was going to say, oh, I have a clever statement. There's no kids in this, but there are. We see Andor as a young man with his sister. That's been kind of drilled into our heads that's going to be an important plot point, him finding his sister. But spoiler alert, and there are going to be spoilers in this for those who are watching. He doesn't find his sister. 12 episodes.
Yeah.
I guess it's gonna be several season arc or something like that. So
I suppose. I mean, the way they conducted this series and the way they finish it off, they left plenty of room for additional backstory before you get to the Rogue One story.
Yeah, the thing that I find interesting. So okay, well, that's right off the bat. Right off the bat, they tell us that it's 5 BBY, right? So 5 years before the Battle of Yavin, right? And Rogue One takes place 0 BBY. It takes place during the same year, approximately, right? The events right before the Battle of Yavin. So,
I'll see. I missed that point about 5 years before. I didn't see that.
It's at the beginning. There's a little text on the screen. It says Morlana 1, and then it says BBY 5. And I thought that was interesting because, it doesn't explain what BBY means. It could have said 5 years before the Battle of Yavin, but it assumes that the hardcore Star Wars fans are going to be watching this. And they're going to, or somebody who's not is going to go say, what is this? And somebody in the room is going to say, oh, come on, BBY. That's the calendar. That's how they tell in Star Wars lore. So I kind of thought, okay, this is an invitation for like hardcore fans, or a little more hardcore fans. And I thought that was kind of a neat.
I think it definitely is. I think the writers definitely were planning on having people who are already familiar with this universe tuning in, because even if you're well versed in that universe, there are a lot of planets, a lot of location changes, and at the very beginning, sometimes it was a little hard to keep track, particularly because you have 2 different parallel storylines going on.
Probably the same issue with Rogue One. When I saw Rogue One in the theaters, I was slightly confused. At the beginning, I was like, wait a minute, which planet are we on? But then, of course, multiple rewatchings, I know exactly what's going on now. But the first time through, I was like, wait a minute, okay, it's, and of course, in the Star Wars universe, there's only one biome for each planet. So I was like, okay, it's raining here, so it must be this planet. This planet's basically a desert. It's very arid. Jeddah was very arid. So
I think that's all. Sorry about that noise. I think that's all popular science fiction. Trek's the same way. One planet, like you said, one biome. It's the same everywhere, all over the place. People are the same.
Yeah. It's probably no variability. Storytelling device to keep the audience like on track too.
Yeah, it would be too much if I had to know about, well, there's different countries on this planet and different races in this planet. Yeah, it's too much.
Well, they did a little bit of it, but in episode 1, where they had like the 2 sentient races, on the same planet. But but we don't want to talk about the prequels. All right, so no offense, but it sucked. So this is Star Wars without lightsabers.
Yeah, Star Wars without Jedi entirely. That's correct, right? Not a single Jedi in this series.
So I said lightsabers because I'm cheating, because I think there are actually 2 lightsaber-like things that happen, and it's towards the end of it's in the last episode. So Luthen's ship has like this special weapon that looks like
right.
two lightsabers come out, and he like
Right.
and like takes out like two TIE fighters, pretty slick.
Yeah, that was one of the good action sequences. So I thought this show, it's got a real slow burn to start.
No kidding.
Not a lot of action takes place over the first couple of episodes. Then there's an episode with a really good action sequence, probably the best action sequence of the entire series, which is not a good thing because you don't want to have your best adrenaline rush early on. And I think that's kind of what happened with this show. There was a lot of buildup for the final episode that didn't really pay off.
Yeah.
So it's not a huge problem, but I think it's just it's a built-in audience expectation that when you build up to the final episode where events finally converge, it felt like it'd be bigger than it actually turned out to be.
I had a similar critique. So like at the very beginning, when we get the scene where the bully security guards, nobody likes a bully, right? So especially like, Star Wars geeks, we tend not to like bullies. And so when you have these two bullies and they jump Andor, basically, you try to extort him, and he like headbutts the guy and doesn't realize that he kills him, but then, he's dead. And then he decides, well, I mean, in for a penny, in for a pound. And he puts the gun at the guy's head, cold-bloodedly murders him as he's on his knees. I thought, this is the Star Wars that I've been looking for, right? This is like action, hard characters. The good guy is gray, like there's depth, there's complexity. He does, Cassian's character does the same thing in Rogue One, right? He kills one of his own allies to prevent him from informing or being captured, and possibly informing the Imperials about the transaction that they just made. So, it's all in keeping with what we know about Andor, even though this is events that precede those. But we know that he's not afraid to kill if he has to. And, it's interesting.
To that point, darker, grittier Star Wars. It seems like any movie, book series, TV series, intellectual property doesn't start out dark and gritty, but if it's been around long enough and enough stories have been told, fans are constantly clamoring for darker, grittier. And Andor gives you that, but it doesn't feel like Star Wars to me because that's not what Star Wars is. Even in the original trilogy, Han Solo is supposed to be this pirate who doesn't care. He's nothing like that. He's a good guy. He's
a pirate with a heart of gold.
Pirate with the heart of gold. Yeah, he's not hard. Of course, he shot first and he killed Greedo, but it was kill or be killed in that situation, right? But that's outside of that, he has no other cold characteristics or actions for the rest of the trilogy, and really none of the other characters do either. So it's very family friendly in that regard. And as you point out, Andor is much more willing to. It's willing to do a number of things. It's willing to give you all sorts of tiny details about this fictional universe to the point where it's more detail than I wanted.
It's a lot. There are a lot of characters and it's hard to keep track of. I printed out a list just to like refer to because we don't even get a lot of them, like their last names or anything. But this is just like the first page of that. And it's a lot. And it's like, that's a lot of characters to keep track of over 12 episodes.
So the characters that Andor interacts with, that's fine. I mean, there's only a few that are important to the plot. But where I thought the parallel plot tended to bog down was in the machinations of Mon Mothma. And, what is she doing to fund the rebellion? It did nothing for me.
No,
I was very interested in the Stellan Skarsgård character because he's a great actor. I would watch him in anything. It's just he has that gravelly voice when he delivers a line. Yeah. You want to listen to it because it sounds and feels weighty no matter what it is. Kind of like a Gene Hackman character. He could be in any movie and you'd watch it.
Yeah.
So I enjoyed that part of the political plot, but the Mon Mothma stuff just bored me to death. I hate to say it, it was just boring.
Yeah, I always wanted to see more of what her character was, but she's just in there because of Rogue One. And then, like you said, this better pay off like down the road because they've set up so much. It's gonna, and you're right. I think it could have been an editor would have done a great job, like taking that out.
But not only that, but I'm a fairly smart guy, but I got to tell you, there when you were getting towards the last 3 episodes or so, and it's clear that she's making some kind of a bridal deal with her daughter because of
she's selling her daughter, the
fix that she's gotten in. All the discussions prior to that, I'm like, what's going on? What's happening?
Yeah.
I figured it all out later, but there was a long period of boredom and confusion over.
Yeah. I don't care that your teenage daughter doesn't like you. Like that's every teenage or ever, like at some point, right? That's just being a teenager. That's not Star Wars. That's boring. I want to see lasers. I want to see fights. I want to see, you know what I mean? I want to see action. I want to see the rebellion, like. Right.
So if you thought the political machinations that were involved in the cursed prequels could be boring.
Yeah.
It wasn't quite that bad, but same level of stuff. So I guess there are people, and I certainly read plenty of comments where there are people like, yeah, this is the detail I'm looking for. So there's a certain part of the fan base that want that.
Yeah. Well, we're back to the gravelly voice thing for a second. The scene where Luthen and Saw Gerrera, talk about 2 great actors, obviously, like Forrest Whitaker. Did he win the Academy Award for playing Idi Amin? Or he was certainly nominated that year, but just real. And then, and of course their voices, if you could watch that scene or you could listen to that scene and still like get the emotional impact out of it,
So here's what I like about bringing in an actor like him is that here's an actor who is, he's a big name. He's got lots of gravitas. And he's older, there aren't a lot of old characters in Star Wars. It's about young people,
right? Unless
there's an elder mentor, figure from the hero's journey. And he doesn't play that. He's just he's the wise guy who's had enough and is tired of taking crap from the Empire, and he's going to do something about it. But it's unusual for Star Wars to bring in an actor of that caliber, an older actor of that caliber.
Yeah, and he does have that Star Wars pedigree. Of course, he was in Rogue One as well. So, and he's actually in a couple of the animated series as well. He's in
Clone Wars. Where was he in Rogue One? I've forgotten apparently.
Oh yeah, so he was Jin goes to see him. They use Jin to get to Forrest Whitaker, right? I'm sorry, to Saw Gerrera. And then apparently Saw was friends with Jin's father and knew her as a child, and they had seen each other in 10 years or whatnot. Yeah. And he's the one that like discovers her in the hidey hole, you know, in the bunker. And so they have that brief meeting before, the test of the Death Star blows up Jeddah City. And then he decides that that's going to be his swan song. He's not going to run away. He's going to face the music.
Right.
So when he takes his mask off and stands there and the wall of dust is coming at him.
I got it. I miscommunicated. I thought you meant that Stellan Skarsgård had been in Rogue One.
Oh, totally my fault. I apologize. Yeah,
no worries.
I don't know that. I don't think he has been.
No, pretty sure not.
One thing you were saying earlier about this not being Star Wars brings up a point, and this is one of my favorite movies, and we discussed this, of course. But how did you feel about the Blade Runner overtones? Did you get that? Did you get a feeling like at the beginning, especially with that bar and the neon and like the rain, and did that give you a kind of like a Blade Runner-ish feel?
Yeah, it does, and I think that's just because there are certain tropes that are so well established now, and
it's a shorthand.
It's a shorthand, and Blade Runner is so important in the shorthand of science fiction dystopias, grim worlds that aren't what science fiction used to be in the 50s or 60s. You know, everything's shiny and new and happy.
So there's a couple things though that like were very specific that kind of like make me feel that the writers were either paying fan service to Blade Runner or they were heavily influenced by it. And Andor's weapon, you know, of choice, not the one he steals off the guards at the beginning, but the one that we see him like put in the back of Cyril's head at one point. And it makes like a kind of a satisfying click sound before, you know, which of course a laser pistol would have no reason to do, but it's just great.
Well, they often cock blasters and laser pistols too, because you have to have some kind of priming sound to let everybody know that this is a serious weapon.
Every once in a while, well, I mean, with Ghostbusters, you flip the toggle switch and it went, so you could have something like that, you know. But yeah, that, the neon in the bar, the hairstyle of the, we'll call her hostess, and then later Luthen's assistant, I can't remember her name right away, in the antique store, she's got kind of a very Sean Young-esque Rachel the robot like look, and the payphone, not that there aren't payphones anywhere, but the fact that they use like a payphone when Bix's boyfriend, Tim with 2 M's, how Star Wars is that? Tim, you know, the enchanter and the enchanter. He's like, he calls in to rat out Andor like a super futuristic payphone. The music, there's definitely some strains in there of Vangelis. They're just like, they're so ethereal and the tension builds and it's like, oh, that could be right off of the Blade Runner soundtrack. I thought the music was really effective in this. It's not John Williams, but it's way better than The Mandalorian. I mean, if there's any critique I have of The Mandalorian, I have several, but they really let me down when it came to the soundtrack.
I definitely agree with that. There were times when the music was so cheesy that I noticed it. It
was annoying.
That's what you don't want to notice the music because there were definitely many times in Mandalorian where I'm like, this is something you would get off of a cheap television show, you know, a network television show.
I feel like maybe they were going for a kind of Sergio Leone like spaghetti western like feel, like they were trying to do that.
Yeah,
it wasn't even that over the top. It wasn't enough. It was, if they were going for that, they needed to go further with it, and it didn't work. And they needed to have a catchy thing, but that little like woodwind.
So I don't know what you do with music when you're doing post movie Star Wars shows, because the John Williams music is so much an integral part of the experience that, well, you can't have that. So what do you do?
Well, they rearrange it. So for the Clone Wars and some of the other animated series, they have a new composer who basically uses all of John Williams' strains and just rearranges them. And so you're basically, you know, it's so
all the light motifs.
Like me saying, why don't you riff on Mozart for a while? And then you just make songs that sound like it. And it works. It's really great. But but for this, there's so much different music at different points. Like when they go to the beach resort planet, there's like this really cool, like instrumental, experimental kind of rockin', like, I don't know, like I got the feeling like I might hear this at a nightclub in Ibiza or something like that. You know, it's just like do 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 do, and this weird like alien kind of voices over top almost. I really like that. And in fact, during the credits, you notice it more than during the introduction to the planet, but it definitely gives you a feel of, okay, we're on a different world now, and here's what's going to happen next. So
yeah, I didn't really notice the music much, which is probably a good thing for the reasons just mentioned. It was adequate, not memorable, but adequate.
So what about the robot? We get introduced to B at the beginning, and one thing I noticed about B is he has one of his wheel covers is a different color than the other ones, right? So I thought that was like an homage to C-3PO having like a different colored appendage.
I think that's just sorry, it's my dog. I think that's just a typical Star Wars universe thing where everything's banged up and patched together, particularly on what's the name of the planet that he had been living on with his adopted mom for Eric's, yeah. Eric's is much like Tatooine. The population's poor. Nobody has anything. It's all secondhand stuff. Kind of the outreaches of nowhere. So that it didn't make me think of anything more than that. B was, you have to have a soft spot for that one because they tried really hard to. It's basically his dog. It's just a robot instead, and can talk.
In fact, the dog's like urinate on him at the beginning, and then he has to defend himself by pulling a R2-D2, like when R2 zaps like Salacious Crumb or the Ewoks, he has that little zapper. So B has one of those and he scares the dogs off, but they have no respect for him. Droids do not do well in the Star Wars universe. They are second-class citizens for sure.
Oh, for sure. But to make a dog-like robot who is very sentimental and is supposed to pluck your heartstrings, it's really easy to screw that up and make it super sappy to the point where you don't like the character because it's so obvious. And they didn't do that with this one. It was used sparingly. It was used at kind of the slow and tender moments to make certain scenes more poignant. Mm-hmm. So I thought they handled that really well.
They did. In fact, when Cassian's mother passes away, it's B's reaction that evoked the most emotion in me. It wasn't any of the other characters. It wasn't Bix. It wasn't the other guy, that Cassian's buddy. I guess I could pull a name out, but it was. But that speaks to the fact that those characters were in the background for me. It was B's reaction to, you could stay the night, like that kind of thing. Okay, just one night. Those kinds of very human, very childlike, very lost, right, reactions. And it was like, that's what drove home her demise for me. Certainly wasn't Andor's reaction. He's cold and he's stoic. Yeah, I thought that was interesting. The other android, who was actually an android, like human shaped, was the KX unit on that pleasure planet or the beach resort planet. And
that just pins them against the wall.
Yeah, we're expecting K2SO, right? Because we're expecting that wonderful Alan Tudyk, hilarious comic relief. No. This is what their primary design was, right? They're just gonna they're enforcers, right?
Yeah, they're enforcers. Yeah.
But he didn't mean hang. He meant watch. They're like hang. And he pins him against the wall.
I did spend a little bit of time thinking about that because that was a really great scene. And it made me think about how seamless it was because these units are, they're like 8 feet tall, 9 feet tall, and they're just pinning him up. His feet are dangling. But you don't, whatever series of levers and green screens and wires that they use to achieve that, seamless. It just looked like they filmed something that actually happened with a giant robot.
Yeah. And that, of course, you said with the feet off the ground and being held by the neck, of course, evokes Vader. So you got the ultimate Imperial being like, what's the word? I said invoked, but that's not the right word. Anyway, they're calling your mind back to like the start of the original Star Wars movie, which is great. So there are great moments, I think, in this series. But I agree with you that after Cassian's confrontation and murder, for lack of a better word, of even if it's in somewhat self-defense, the first one was in self-defense. The second one's not in self-defense. I guess it's in self-defense if you look at a corrupt system that would not have granted him mercy, then I guess you'd call it self-defense. But that's, I guess, a legal point. It really slows down for 2 episodes. Like it's just so.
Well, I did. So at multiple points, I felt like this was a filler episode. You could have cut this out and lost nothing.
Yes.
You know, it's backstory for the sake of backstory. It didn't really, there were a number of episodes that didn't advance the plot, didn't advance the characters. And part of the other issue that I have with it is that is the way that Andor is portrayed. I mean, the actor's very good. I can't remember his name, but he kind of repeats the same sorts of lines over and over and over again, which kind of gave him a lack of depth. I can't give an example, but
yeah.
You know, most of his lines are delivered in the way like, you know, I have no choice. You know, this is what I have to do, repeatedly.
Yeah.
And in the Lord of the Rings movies, you know, there were a lot of funny jokes made at the expense of the actor who played Frodo, because he always has that hurt, deep, meaningful look in his eyes through the every single film. His entire job was to look hurt and vulnerable and pitiful all the time. That's kind of, Andor kind of got into the same, like there's only so much steely-eyed look that you can do.
Yeah.
And that was pretty much what they gave his character throughout this. So it got a little tiresome for me.
Yeah, I blame that sort of thing on the director, not the actor, because actors do what they're told, right? So the director's like, here's your motivation, here's your character. Okay, now give me this. Now give me this. Now they can say like, okay, now let's have a tender moment here. Your mom just died, you know, let's have a tear. No, they didn't go for that. They were like, Andor is this, and that's what we're going to give you.
Yeah.
And for 12 episodes, you know?
Exactly. So you really, he doesn't have a lot of depth. You know what his motivation is. His motivation is very clear and obvious.
Yeah.
Although he does have this complicating backstory that they didn't do a whole lot.
No.
Okay.
Why did we have all those scenes with him as a kid if nothing happens?
Not only that, why is it important that he comes from a non-technological society?
Right. We don't have any reason.
Why does that matter?
Anything about that. We have this throwaway line about him being in a detention facility from ages 13 to 16. We have a, because he meets the one guy when they're going to go on the Aldani mission, and he has a tattoo of like a prison like symbol or something, and you know they have a moment together. Yeah, I mean, you know, so like we just don't. I don't know. I wish. You know, I hate to say this. I wish that Bix, his like former girlfriend, I guess, you know, I wish that she had been tortured in front of him or something like that, or that the Imperials had maltreated his mother or something. Like that's the motivation, right? Why is Andor like going to like suddenly stop being selfish and rail against the Empire? Give me a reason. Well, killing your ex-girlfriend that you still like sort of had a relationship with, a friendship with, and torturing your mom, that would be enough for me. That would be good, you know. But instead it's my sister's lost and they may have slaughtered the village, but I'm not sure. Like that's not good writing, you know. That's very cloudy, murky, not good writing.
Right. So it's the rudiments of a good sharp drama are there, but like you said before, either an editor or a director, they needed to pare it back and refine it.
Yeah.
Because there is a lot of murkiness and a lot of excess that doesn't add to the story overall. It just draws it out for a couple of other extra episodes. Maybe sometimes in television you have to fill a certain number of episodes.
Yeah.
I don't know if they said, well, we'll shoot as many episodes as it takes, or if they said, you got to fill 9 episodes. How you choose to do is up to you.
That's a good point. I don't know how that worked. Hey, I found out that lying takes a lot of energy for droids. I never knew that before. Did you see that? Where he's like, "Can you lie for me?" You know, he's like, "I have to recharge my batteries."
Right.
You know? That's 2 lies. Well, yeah, there was some nice like comic. I mean, the droids are always comic relief in these.
They usually are, but. I think it's true for human beings too, right? I think, well, right. unless you're a psychopath,
unless you're a pathological liar, yeah.
Right. If you're an ordinary moral person, lying is hard, and it does take extra energy to keep up the pretense.
Yeah. So one more thing about music. So when Bix goes up to use the radio and she's in that smokestack or whatever, there was a nice moment there. You introduced me to this artist, Keto Salag, I think. I don't know if that's how you pronounce it. It was Hungarian artist, and his name means like nebula, I think. But there's a lot of there's these very subtle like bell type tones in his music. And I heard that when she's up there, when she's climbing up there. And I thought that was a wonderful choice. I know, I'm sure it's not that artist, but I don't know, and I have no idea if that was an influence, but it is a kind of a tower, and there is a bell tower in the town on Ferrix, and they're in that town, and so it sort of makes sense thematically, like that you would use bells at that point. But I just thought that was a really nice background image, and I remember. Do you remember like recommending that to me? That music, I listen to it quite often. It's very ethereal. It's very great for meditation.
I don't. The name doesn't ring a bell. No pun intended. But I'm sure that if I heard any of the music, it would immediately.
Oh, I'll email it back to you.
I'm curious.
Yeah, I'll text it back to you. So yeah, okay. Let's talk about Cyril for a while. All right, Cyril is the empire. He wants to be more than he is, right? So like,
this is the young security agent.
Yeah, he kind of overreaches. He's not ready for command, but he tries to command. His commander comments on his uniform. Have you modified your uniform? Well, a few pockets and stitching and maybe a little bit. So like, we know that he's very concerned about his appearance. He dresses very nattily. In fact, there's one scene where he's on the intercom or the communication device in his mom's house, and he's wearing this kind of nightshirt, this kind of pajamas, and I was like, oh, I want those pajamas, man. That is cool looking, but like he's
clearly he's a true believer.
Yes.
In a job that everybody else his superiors are very jaded about. It's like, file the report, make it up, whatever you have to do. This is how we do work here. And he's like, no, you have to do it the right way. This is serious. He believes in all of it because he's young and enthusiastic,
idealistic,
and all of the other people around him that he works with all disappoint him. He's looking for somebody that will appreciate his enthusiasm.
I feel like that generates sympathy in me as a viewer. I'm sympathetic to Cyril. He's an Imperial. I know but I've worked in situations, I'm sure we all have, where I cared about the job getting done and it seemed like nobody else did. And so I think that was clever on the writer's part to evoke that kind of sympathy, because if he's unsympathetic, we don't care. We won't care about that plot.
I agree, and I think.
And I cared.
I think that was well done, because if he had just been a run of the mill, well, this is how he became an Imperial. He's a bad dude. Of course, he becomes an Imperial. That's what bad dudes do. But it's not quite that simple. The part about his character that I could not understand, not about his character, but why the writers felt they had to do this. All those sequences with his Jewish mother. Why?
I don't know.
Why?
One might have been fine too, but she does have some great lines. Like
she does, but it's
great actress, but it's not Star Wars.
It's the classic Jewish mother. Why can't you be more like your brother? Your uncle's trying to help you get a job. Why don't you take any of his jobs? They're good enough for you.
Did you notice the blue milk in the cereal bowl?
Yeah.
He's eating his Fruity Pebbles and she pours, the blue milk on top. And then he takes one out and he kind of looks at it and it looks like a planet, it almost like, I was almost expecting them to dissolve into like a planetscape, they didn't go for it. And then later the same thing, but he picks one up and he like kind of tosses it back in his bowl, either in disgust or just anger, like a little bit of petulance.
So he's like a millennial, he crashed out of his first job. Now he has to go back home. and live with his overbearing mother and take her daily abuse about what a failure he is. So again, I thought that was just padding that didn't add much.
I have a feeling that's autobiographical. I think somebody somewhere in the writer's room was like, okay, I got
exercising their own demons.
I got to get this out of my system. I got to put this somewhere. And then they were like, okay, we'll use it. The sergeant, the drunk sergeant who's enthusiastic like he is, Sergeant Mosk, right? It's kind of stout, burly.
The Scottish guy.
Is he Scottish? Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And he's
like,
no, yes, sir. Yes, sir. No, sir. Yes, sir.
He was great.
Yeah, he's great actor.
Great because they make him so gung-ho and make him seem so competent at first.
Yeah.
And then of course they get their butts kicked on Ferrix, and he's out of control. He doesn't know what to do either. Yeah. Nobody knows what to do.
He's drunk.
They've just gotten destroyed.
Yeah. There's fomenting out there. There's fomenting, sir.
Yeah.
Pockets. I love that accent. Pockets of fomenting.
No, I like the choice of actor for that character for sure. And in fact, I was disappointed that we didn't see more of him. I thought.
I hope we see more of him. I hope he comes back in season 2.
But that was really just to throw the young guy's character into sharp relief, to show that he's not confident. He doesn't know what he's doing. He has to take the lead from somebody else, even though he's technically in charge. Yeah. You know, he's the green lieutenant in Alien.
Yes, exactly. And that's right. Corporal Hicks is going to say
how many drops?
That's right.
For you.
Combat drops.
17 simulated.
Yeah. 2, including this one. What about the best way to sharpen the blade is to use it? Yeah, right. What a great line. What a great, isn't that just like, I mean,
this guy's serious.
Yeah, the guy's like, I've been wanting to kill somebody, that's why I signed up. He's like Tackleberry in the Police Academy movies. When do we get guns? When do we get guns?
No, yeah, he's a guy, he's a small-time thug that likes the petty authority that he has. And he's going to use it every chance he gets.
And then when they're on the way to when it's going to get good, like episode 3, when they're on the way to like enforce the law, and get this Cassian Andor scoundrel, he gives the sergeant addresses the troops, but then he gives Cyril a chance to give a little speech, right?
Yeah, right. He has. Okay, we're all prepared and do what you got to do. He has no idea.
There are times when you got to do the right thing.
Very inspiring, sir. Very inspiring.
Yeah. That's the best part.
And everybody's like,
yeah. Terrible.
It's humiliating.
Like, claps him on the shoulder. Inspiring. That was awesome. That was like, it's almost Monty Python-esque,
It was a good laugh line, that one.
Yeah,
for sure.
That was great. And contrast that with like the scene from like The Force Awakens with like General Hux, right? Which is so over the top and unnecessary. That whole scene was like shot, and they were like, okay, we got to use this somehow in the movie. And he's like practically spitting while he's like spitting with anger, We'll show them, blah, 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 and it's like his hat's like going to fall off his head and everything right before they use the giant planet killer, like the multi-planet killer, the way over the top Death Star weapon. And it's like, over the top weapon, over the top speech, and now we get this not incompetent, but like he wants to be that, I think. Cyril wants to be the guy that's out there, like inspiring the troops, but he just doesn't have it yet, like he's his first mission, really,
Yes. But it's interesting though, that I if you had asked me what's the name of this character, I wouldn't have been able to tell you. I don't know what half the names of the characters are. So for instance, you have another high caliber actor they brought in, which I was happy to see. The guy who's running the Imperial Intelligence Unit.
Anton Lesser is the actor's name.
Yeah. Is that his name? I've seen him in many things. In the last 6 years or so, he's everywhere all of a sudden. Yeah.
Another great voice.
Yes, he's got a great voice, very distinctive, very small guy, but very commanding on-screen presence. Another one where he speaks in a very deliberate way that, you know, he's not loud, but you know, you better listen.
Yeah.
Right. So he's perfect for that role. And he plays it really well. And also kind of feeling out the woman who is another climber who wants to be big in Imperial intelligence.
Yeah, Dedra is her first name. I forget what her last name is off the top of my head.
He doesn't immediately assume that just because she's enthusiastic that he should listen to her.
Dedra Miro.
Yeah, he doesn't assume that because she's enthusiastic she has anything important to say at all. But eventually he's like, all right, well, you check that out, you know, see if it amounts to anything, because I'm not convinced. And then, you know, after several successful efforts, he finally figures out that, yeah, she actually is delivering good ideas and intelligence. And why aren't the rest of you doing anything?
Yeah, he comes to admire her. At one point, he pulls her aside after a meeting and says, watch your back. He says, well played. Right. He says, well played. But then he says, watch your back.
Right.
He's kind of rooting for her, you know?
He is rooting for her. And it's the kind of bureaucratic complexity where it's like, look, I've seen a lot of other people like you come and go. I'm not impressed. So it takes a lot until he finally admits to her, is like, okay, you're doing good.
Yeah. Kid.
Yeah. So he's a good actor for that.
Yeah. He played Qyburn in Game of Thrones. He played the evil Cersei's.
That's right.
They call them maesters. I think they call them.
Yeah, maesters. Yeah. But I think I first saw him in, I don't know if you've ever seen Endeavor.
I have not.
Yeah, which is a series of, it's basically the young version of, what the heck? It's a long-running British series. He's a grumpy, irascible detective, and this series is all about his young career in the 1960s.
Okay.
And this actor plays the guy who runs the police station, basically. That's where I first saw him, and then after that, he started popping up everywhere.
Well, I mean, you know, there are a lot of actors that started late in life, so maybe maybe that was his second career. Sorry, I'm trying to figure out where I was going next. Oh, so the mission, right? So he gets recruited by Luthen. Cassian gets recruited by Luthen, and you know, he thinks that it's going to be like, okay, I'm going to sell this guy's Skarsgård's character, right? I'm going to sell him this really cool piece of equipment, which we've seen because, right, it's the fighter pilot uses it in like the TIE fighter, right? From Star Wars, it's that big box that they were like turning knobs on in order to shoot down the X-Wings during the trench run, right? Yep. And they call it a star path, whatever. Yep. And it doesn't matter because it's just a prop.
It's MacGuffin.
It's a MacGuffin because exactly, it's MacGuffin because, you know, he's trying to recruit, you know, Cassian for a mission. And then they go, and so Cassian says, okay, great, I'll go. But that takes forever too, right? So now we got to meet a whole bunch of new characters. And it's like, dude, we just had this great fight scene, you know, and you know, the natives basically took down like the cops.
Yep.
You know, the Imperial, the corporate cops.
Corporate cops, yeah.
Yeah. They're like, I don't know, Halliburton or something. And like, you know, and they're like, so they beat those guys. It's not the actual army, but they're like, you know, and then now we got to like, Cassian's going to go somewhere else. We got to meet a whole new cast of characters. And it's like, this is not the way to write a story, you know?
Yeah. And the other cast of characters that you meet are
boring,
not particularly interesting. You know, there's the young poet. And
he's the most interesting character. He gets some interesting lines, you know.
Yeah,
and you know he's going to die.
Of course, but you know his true believing and his feeling heart are there to put his death into sharp relief.
Exactly.
But that's okay. I mean, you know, you get tropes like that in any drama.
Well, he's a little more than that in a way, because he's writing this manifesto, and he actually says at one point early on meeting Cassian, although Cassian uses a different name, he says, you're my perfect audience, right? You're my target audience, basically, is what he's saying, right? And then when he's dead, one of the things Vel does is she says he wanted you to have his manifesto to Cassian. And Cassian, there's this great moment for the actor. There's this really great look on his face where he has fear. He has the gun. He's totally in control of the situation, but he has fear in his eyes. And he says, I don't want it. She's like, he insisted you have it. He's like, I don't want it. Because he's afraid to read it. Because he's afraid he may change, right? His sympathies, he's gonna like, that's where the character, that's a moment for the character where it's like, and the actor, where it's like he stops being a thief and he's gonna start like getting some of these weird rebellious ideas. And he's gonna get infected by them. He's not gonna be able to ignore them anymore, And I just thought that scene was, and of course the four-handed surgeon. What a great profession for somebody who has four hands, right? To be like an internal surgeon.
You would need one less assistant.
Yeah. No, so you get him, you get the prison guy, you get the former stormtrooper, you get a guy who's on the inside. You got to have the guy that's on the inside. You can't get in otherwise. You got the lover of the leader. You got, that's it, right? It's like 6 of them, 7 of them, I guess.
Sounds about right.
Something like that. But it's like they're all forgettable.
Yeah.
They don't do anything for me. I didn't have any moments with them where it was interesting.
No.
They're just there to be a foil for Cassian and to get the plot moving, and it takes too long. And then
it did take too long. And I watching that episode, I was sitting there thinking, is something going to happen?
Let's get to the dam,
Yeah.
Well, the best thing that happens is we see a TIE fighter buzz them. That's about it.
Right. That's very brief. And so that's another one of those moments where, I think I said to you before we started this call that part of my problem with Andor is that it has all the Star Wars props. Everybody's dressed like their Star Wars characters. All the names are Star Wars names. But there are many times where there's no Star Wars feel.
It was almost as if the writers or the director was like, hey, wait a minute. We got to remind the audience that this is Star Wars. Let's have a TIE fighter fly in.
Yes.
Like it was that bad.
Exactly. Because I don't know whether it's bad. That's just a personal observation. But it could have been the story. It could have been in any fictional universe. There was no particular need for it to be in the Star Wars universe.
Don't get me wrong. I'll take a TIE fighter any day. Anytime
sure.
You want to throw one in, I love that sound. Sure. It's just unbelievable.
And, I liked the show. I did not like the show. It wasn't, no. I didn't, it was, Mandalorian was, I enjoyed it in a different way. Mandalorian was a bit more kid friendly.
Yeah.
And at first it was so kid friendly. I thought this is not going to be for me. And then it got better as it went along, but it just didn't have a Star Wars vibe, despite having all the accoutrements of that universe. And it's not because it was missing. Some people are like, oh, thank God we finally got a Star Wars with no magical space wizards. And number one, I'm thinking, why is that a bad thing?
Yeah, come on.
You tell me you don't like the magical space wizards? You're lying. You're lying.
Everybody wants to have force powers. Come on.
Right.
Who doesn't want to be superhuman? I mean, look at the whole Marvel universe. That's all it's about.
Yes. And then there are people that are like, oh, thank God this doesn't involve any Skywalkers. I'm like, but I really don't care if they find another way to work in some aspect of that in a different series. It's not essential, but so everybody, the people who are really hardcore, they got what they wanted. And again, reading the comments, they really did get what they wanted. They're like, this is great. I love it. It's finally the gritty Star Wars I've been looking for. No Jedi, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, okay, well, that's good for you. Mm-hmm. But maybe I'm just looking for something a little bit different.
Mm-hmm. Well, if you look at it, you got a murder at the beginning. So and then you got a detective. So you have a detective series, basically. You got the Imperial's trying to figure out where Andor is. So it's a Law and Order episode, right?
Yeah.
And then you got a robbery. you got a heist. So it's like Ocean's
heist.
11 or something, whatever. I mean, it's not even that good. And then because the heist is kind of boring, actually. The eye is neat when the atmospheric effects. I mean, that was kind of cool, and you know, but the whole thing with like the villagers and how the Empire is exploiting them and all, they talk about how they did it, but they don't show it. So like, why you're not giving me any reason to sympathize with these schleps that are like, you know, schlepping up the mountain and looking for their once every 3 years experience. Give me a reason to sympathize with these people. Instead, they're just stupid dopes that the Empire is like, you know, bought off with a couple furs, you know.
And also the eye thing, I almost felt like somebody came up with a cool special effect and said, we have to find a way to use this.
I agree, but it did like help the plot a little bit. It helps their escape.
It helps their escape.
I can get over that.
And also it causes the diversion because the natives are having their little native ritual. That could be in any drama. It could be here on, you know, modern day Earth, where fireworks are going off.
Well, it gives it
you can disguise your gunshot as part of the fireworks. That's another common thing to do, right? So I guess it was that.
It gives it a deadline too. It gives you so for the plot, because it's like, well, why don't we just wait till we're ready and then we'll take the money? Well, no, we have to do it on this date because this only happens once every 3 years. Now that's a plot device. Okay, so you know, and that's good. That's decent writing. I mean, but you know, that's why it was there. You know, as far as I'm concerned.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. So let's see. We talked about the Imperial espionage, or not espionage, but kind of the crackdown intelligence unit. What was the woman's name? That was part of the intelligence unit.
Dedra Miro is her name.
Is that the actress or the?
No, her name is Denise Gough or something.
Okay, so Dedra is the character's name. Again, I couldn't have told you what the character's name was. That didn't seem important.
Well, the way like Anton Lesser's character, who I can't remember his name or his character's name, is like Dedra Miro. I just kind of like remember him. I kind of, that voice in my head kind of kept that.
That's a very good impression.
Oh, thanks.
But the thing about her, interestingly, is that she is dead cold.
Yeah.
I mean, like dead cold. Yeah. You know that she is a soulless bureaucratic husk that exists to do nothing other than the Empire's business. She has no redeeming qualities. She has no redeeming qualities. Yeah, she's a sadist.
She enjoys the torture scene.
Yes.
Which is a fantastic scene, by the way. And then we'll get to that in a second. She also takes up arms when she could have just like held back, you know, but no, when there's the Ricks Road incident with the protesters, she takes out her weapon and she's like gunning down people, right? Or she wants to.
Exactly what you would expect after that point.
Yeah. So, but the scene, let's talk about the torture scene. What a great idea for torture. We are going to put headphones on you and force you to listen to children die. The screams of young children, from even if it's from an alien race. But we're and the Dr. Mengele character, you know, he's got that morbid, fascinated kind of like, you know, Nazi, like, you know, experimenter, like, look, you know, it's, you know, we found our own people, 3 of them hiding, cowering after they heard it, the radio transmissions. They were on the subdeck under the bridge, you know, and almost, you know, they almost did the Peter Lorre kind of, you know, or the Nazi from Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Yeah, it was thinking about him.
Is nefarious.
Yeah,
you know, kind of.
Well, he was actually more sinister than that because his delivery was actually fairly smooth, and that's what made it more chilling, right? Because he actually seems like the boy next door.
At first, when you look at him,
but then you find out he's essentially a Mengele type Nazi character. His takes joy in his work, and he'd like nothing more than to watch you go through this.
Dr. Gorst or something like that.
Yeah, something.
Yeah. And then, so that was great. There's a great homage to Star Wars though. So they're torturing Bix. The door closes and they show boots walking outside. The boot, they focus on the boots of a Imperial walking outside that. Just like when they're going to torture Leia with the probe droid, and the door goes, and then we see boots on the deck walk by. It's like the exact same cadence.
That's interesting.
It's
been
so long moment.
since I've seen A New Hope that that
whatever you had. I threw that out on the net, and some people were like, I was thinking the exact same thing, and other people were like, in the comments were like, I didn't see that at all. Thanks for putting that up there, because it was really subtle, but like, I don't know why, but I must have not blinked at that moment and just caught it. And I was like, oh man, that's great. That's a director's touch. I just, that, like, if I directed Star Wars, and believe me, I'd love to, if there's anyone out there at Disney listening, I would love to direct. And, I would do serious moments like that, just like really nice little fan service moments where it's just like, because it was genius. Some of that was genius.
There's a lot of fan service in all the shows, I think.
Oh yeah,
which is fine. That doesn't. I like that. That doesn't bother me in the least. Some people say fan service like in a derisive tone. I don't know why.
I love it.
Yeah, I mean, you want to do a callback to a classic film? Go for it.
That's why I'm tuning in, right? It's, you guys, we're all grown up now. So like all the people that grew up with Star Wars, they're writing now, right? So they're in positions of power in creative jobs, and they're able to do all the things that we thought of when we were playing with our little action figures. And they're not dolls, they're action figures. And we were like playing out those little scenarios when we were that age, and saying like, oh, we should do this, or they should do that, or whatever happened in Jabba's palace. There were probably more stories there, And
so interestingly, that happened with episode 8, Rian Johnson. So when Luke does the across the galaxy astral projection, who came up with the idea that Jedis have that ability? Well, there was a book that came out in the 80s that he had when he was a kid. And it was all about the stuff that, it was like the Jedi training manual. And this is one of the powers that the only place it's ever listed anywhere is in that one book. And he said, I'm going to make it canonical. I'm going to make it happen on screen.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So to your point of, the kids who grew up with it are now in charge of writing and directing, and they stick that stuff in.
Yep, exactly. Oh, so there's another great scene between Andor and his mom. And actually, they don't call him his mom until later. Then people start calling him her mom. So, and we see like she kind of like takes him on and adopts him. And then later we find out that like, it's her last name. Andor is actually her last name that she gives him. We don't even find that out until she's dead and given her speech, via projection. But there's this great moment where he thinks that he's gonna leave and come back, right? So he's like, I scored, after the heist. I've got this money. We can leave now. We can get out of here. We can go anywhere we want. I've got like, I don't know how many, 80,000 credits. He has some ridiculous amount of money. And he's paid off all his debts to everybody. And now he wants to leave. And she's like, you can't stay. I can't go and you can't stay, right? So it's that dilemma, right? And so he knows he has to go because he's being sought after, so he can't stay there. But he says, I'll be back. And they don't hug, right? So there's that, it's really tense. And there's love, but they don't hug. And in fact, at one point he says something like, she says, go, take the money, find somewhere, go have some peace, find some peace. And he says, I won't have peace. I'll be worried about you all the time. And she says, that's just love. Nothing you can do about that. And I thought,
that's a good line.
That's a good line. That's a good line. That's a mother to a son, teacher to a student. That's a line, that's a great line, there's nothing you can do about that. And then so in order for him to leave, the writers can't let that sit. I mean, you can't just like have a character walk out. He'd be cold-blooded, right? He says, I'm coming back, So like that gives him the excuse not to hug his mom, because he's going to come back and everything's going to be fine. She's going to come to her senses. Eventually they're going to leave. And but for right now, he has to go. And she's like determined to stay. So he's promising himself he's going to come back. And she says,
go ahead.
Oh, good. She says, of course you are. And then as he leaves, she picks up a rifle. Like she picks it up off the table. She's like silhouetted and she kind of picks it up almost to like move it across the room. But that's the moment where she's going to be active in the resistance. She's going to be part of the rebellion now. Now, she's not just going to sit by. She's going to actively like kind of fomenting. She's going to be a pocket of fomenting, So, which I just love that line.
Well, we didn't even talk about the prison, the water prison surrounded by water.
So here's the thing. You already had the heist. You already had the detective story, and that's ongoing. And now you got a prison break. Okay, so like
they're squeezing a lot in.
Prisons are, I thought, as soon as he got arrested and went to prison, I thought, this is ridiculous. You're going to paint yourself into a corner here. Nothing fun ever happens in prison, right? What are you going to do? It's all about doing time, right? There were moments in that prison that were good, but at first I was very doubtful. I thought this is going to go south.
And boring. It did a bit for me. It did get kind of boring.
Yeah.
Until the actual prison break. I mean, they spent a couple episodes just letting you know prison's bad.
Yeah.
The work is horrible, monotonous, and if you have a medical problem, they just cart you away and throw you.
Okay, but here's the thing. I thought, okay, well, here we're going to get the motivation for Andor, right? To be anti-imperial, right?
Not really.
No, it was clean. They fed them. They treated them pretty well. Okay, they shocked them once in a while if they didn't do that much. But like, seriously, as prisons go, it wasn't horrible. Right?
Yeah.
It could have been a lot.
It was
worse.
clean. You're right. It's a good point. It was clean. The only downside of it was when you found out that the promise of release was untrue. They're just going to kill you.
Yeah, you're slave labor. You're not going to get out. But at least you're somewhat comfortable and clean. You're not in a assault. You're not. What was the mines? You're not in the spice mines of Kessel.
Right.
Yeah. You're not there. So like, and it's funny because even the commander of the post says, you'll find, for those of you who have been in prison before, you'll find that we're rather like, it's rather nice here, basically is what he says. Yeah. It's not that bad. And and they're building something. So they got something to do 12 hours a day, and then they get to go home and eat. But there's another really nice directorial moment in there where it's a prison, but somebody said it's a prison, but there are no bars, right? Because you don't need them because you got the floor. Well, there's a scene where the camera's on floor level and you see the grid pattern, right? It's kind of like your classic perspective lines, going off to a perspective point in the distance. The tiles are all squares, but they're going this way. And from that angle, to me, it looks like a cage, right? So for me, that was like the director saying, there are no walls, but it is a prison. This is the cage, right? And I just thought that was a really nice little touch.
Well, it got them out of a couple of things. One, it made the sets a lot easier to build. You didn't have to build any doors. And there were some nice moments of tension about, he got off the floor just in the nick of time. Before they energized the floor.
Hey man, I would have been in there way before that.
Oh yeah, you and I think everybody else
in the world.
Yeah, exactly.
But the long timers, it made sense. They're casual. They're like, kind of like, my life sucks anyway. I wouldn't half in, half out. Half like, well, whatever. That would have been neat if they had played that a little bit more. But
so interestingly, speaking of big actors. The guy who enables the prison break, Andy Serkis, who was the voice of Gollum.
Yeah.
He was the voice of Snoke.
Yep.
I don't know what else he's done, but you know, he's already kind of a big name in
yeah, we finally got to see his face.
That's right. That's right. Usually he's voice talent.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, he did a good job, I think. I mean, he wasn't like the best actor, but he was decent.
Yeah, I thought he was good.
I thought he was good. You know, when he does his little speech to the troops, that takes entirely too long. That's the other thing. The writers took liberty with these speeches, right? Cyril's speech was good because it had an effect. You know, it showed us his character. He's inexperienced. He's not a good speaker. The speech that, you know, Andy, I'll just say Andy Serkis's character. I can't remember his name right now.
I can't either.
The speech that he gives into the microphone, all he has to say is, "It's our time. Break out. Get weapons. Fight." No, instead he has this big build up. You know, they're never gonna let us out. Blah blah blah. They're never gonna have a better time. Just do it. Just do it. You know, just tell them to leave. I mean,
it's funny. I didn't really think about it until you just mentioned it, but there are a number of long speeches.
Yeah.
And then Andor's mom gives a long speech.
Yeah.
Which, that one makes a little more sense because she's rabble rousing, and the Imperials are getting nervous because they know that this could turn into a riot if they don't shut it down.
They should have known before. I mean, she gives it away too early.
You would think, right?
But it does give the audience time to like get their emotions up and get angry, you know, so like we can sympathize with them, you know, when you know, at that point we all want to take, you know, a Molotov cocktail and lob it at an Imperial. That's the idea. And I thought it was pretty effective. You know, I thought it was good. Like you said, it was a bit long. Could have been a little bit less. The speech that Luthen's character gives to the mole.
That's another speech.
Way too long.
Yeah, I know.
Sacrifice. What did I sacrifice? It's a rhetorical question. Okay, number one, you weren't supposed to answer it. Number two, he goes on and on. Love, peace of mind, all these esoteric things. You know, give me a break, dude. Like, I mean, that was really contrived.
I minded it less because he was delivering it.
Yes, I like his speech. I like his pattern.
But I agree. They could have cut it down. But it's interesting now that we've pointed each one out. There was a lot of speechifying.
Yeah. Show.
Hold on just a second, Pat. Give me a minute. Be right back.
Yeah, go for it. This is intermission.
It's a very brief intermission.
Very brief intermission.
Okay. So because he's a great deliverer of pretty much any line, I'm willing to sit through that speech, but some of the other ones, definitely not.
I listened to it, but how long would a character even the mole? How long would the mole have listened to?
I was going to say, especially the guy that was receiving it, you know, where he had been just an episode earlier debating whether or not to sacrifice him.
Yeah.
You know, to keep the subterfuge intact.
Yeah.
Now, but I wish that I wish that Luthen had more. I thought he was going to have more action scenes, and he after this, like, was either the first episode, I think, first or second episode, he never really did again.
Yeah, he gets on a motorbike.
Well, he had the escape from. Oh, speaking of fan service, right?
Yeah.
He's making his escape before we see the two Saber-like surprise weapons appear. He's being chased by what is billed as essentially a tractor beam sort of cruiser because it has the three big dishes out in front.
Yeah.
Do you know where that design comes from?
No. Is that that's original Ralph McQuarrie. I remember now.
No, even farther back.
Oh,
so
wow.
before McQuarrie was hired on, early on, there was a guy named Colin Cantwell.
Okay.
The name of the cruiser was the Cantwell.
It's the Cantwell class cruiser.
Correct. And so Colin Cantwell was responsible for he came up with the idea for the basic look of the TIE fighter,
Nice.
of the Star Destroyer, and I think and the X-Wing. So he came up with all the vehicles for the first movie.
Wow.
But then McQuarrie and others were brought in, and he I don't know, left or whatever, and they refined his original designs. But his original Star Destroyer design was the triangle, but it had those 3 big radar dishes on the front. So that was a big nod to him.
That's so cool. And I love they called it Cantwell class. I saw that later, but I didn't understand because the computer on Luthen's ship tells him that, I think.
Yeah, so look up Colin Cantwell after we get off of here.
I will.
You can see his original designs, and they're very primitive compared to what finally made it to screen, but the basic ideas are there.
Sure. I mean, he was doing a preliminary thing. They were probably paying him peanuts, and he would have fleshed it all out had he been given the time. And
he just died recently. He only died, I think, within the past 1 or 2 years.
Yeah. So what I liked about that, there were so many things I liked about that scene. The subterfuge, the delay. Hey, I'm a one-man show here. I can't, give me a little bit. Very nicely done. Very believable. The arrogance of well, sir, it's an Alderaan code. We should probably not board them. Oh, no, we need to practice board it anyway. That kind of arrogant. And then he gets his just comeuppance. And when we see the commander of that Cantwell class ship standing after Luthen has done the damage to his fighter wing and escaped, he stands there. The acting's not that great, but he's standing there, and we see his reflected image in the front glass with the splintered dish, which is shattered, just like his career.
Yes.
And he's just looking at it like, yeah. I'm getting demoted or maybe killed.
Yeah. Yeah. So
I hope Vader's not on the watch.
It was another one of those bright spots of action that I could have done with a couple more of those.
Yeah, give me more of that stuff. Like that was
because really again, that's Star Wars, right? That's part of the Star Wars formula.
Yes.
Is that
great escapes?
There's talking and setup, but there's a lot of great escapes and a lot of big action sequences.
And the little ship gets away from the big ship, right?
Andor is more about, there's a lot of talking, trying to set up character motivations, and also the other thing about Star Wars was its simplicity.
Yes.
It was black hats versus white hats.
Literally.
It was not supposed to be morally ambiguous or anything like that.
Let's address color for a moment. I mean, you're an artist, and you understand how color affects mood and that sort of thing. So did you happen to notice anything about the ISB uniforms, about the degree and shades of white?
Not really. I thought it was unusual that they were dressed in white. Normally you would expect Imperials to be in gray or black with red edging. Their uniforms are always very Nazi-esque. Yes. Intentionally.
So, well,
what they are.
Goering was notorious for having a white.
Oh, yes, that's true. Yes. That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, he was, but to distinguish himself from everyone else. And, and we know in sci-fi that everyone wears black except for that one character, right? Like in the Matrix, remember there was that one female character, everybody's wearing black trench coats and sunglasses, or leather, and there's that one character and she's wearing all white,
Also, now that you mention it, Krennic.
Absolutely, Krennic, his cape. Like I said, when I saw Rogue One, I wanted a cape like that for Christmas. It was like, of course I didn't get it, but that's why I'm wearing my white jacket, though. I can tell you that. But no, what I thought was interesting, and I need to go back and kind of verify this, but it seemed to me that the higher you are in rank, the whiter your jacket is.
Interesting.
And to me, that means I don't get my hands dirty, right?
Right.
Behind the scenes, I'm pulling all the strings. Right. I'm telling the Navy to do this. I'm telling the Army to do this. Mm-hmm. I'm telling my spies on the ground to do this. But here I am, Anton Lesser, character, and I'm standing here and I'm just, I can be 5'3" and give all the orders because I am doing nothing physical and won't be bothered with any of that. Wet affairs, as they say.
Wet affairs. Yeah.
Wet affairs.
Yeah.
So, so it's all the machinations. So that was what I got out of it. That was the symbolism I got. But it seemed to me that, and the reason I saw that was because at one point, the Major Partagaz is the character's name. Major Partagaz. He puts on a trench coat over top of his regular uniform. The trench coat is a slightly darker, more like this shade of white than his absolutely lily white uniform. Just impeccable, not a wrinkle to be found. Even when he's sitting down, you don't see, the costumers must have been pulling, somebody must have been sitting underneath the table pulling on that thing. It was just perfect with his little like pips and everything right where they were supposed to be. Immaculate, just awesome. And I just thought that was great. If it doesn't get an award for costuming, it should. The one thing about Mon Mothma's character and her family is that, oh my God, everybody at those events, as they should be, are all like amazingly dressed, the aliens. And they even make a thing of it where Vel, her cousin who is on the Aldani mission, comes back to see her, or is it her sister? I don't remember her relationship to Mon Mothma.
I think cousin, yeah.
Are they cousins or sisters?
So.
She gives the niece some piece of fabric, some dress or something. She's like, oh, your father won't approve, but go ahead and try it on anyway. She's trying to curry favor with her daughter who doesn't like her as much as she likes her father.
Yeah. So again, this fulfills a need that a lot of the fan base has, and I guess I'm just not one of them. Or it could also be that because we were the original generation that saw those movies when they were first in the theater, there's more of a binding to the original source material, and I that and being 55, less need for a deep exploration of the nooks and crannies of the behind the scenes characters.
Well, I agree with you. I think, well, there's one thing I want to say about the Mon Mothma thing. I hope it pans out. But I didn't feel any jeopardy. I don't feel her jeopardy. I'm not sympathetic. Oh my God, 400,000. You misplaced 400,000 credits. That you can't account for. Oh,
you know why there was
rich
no jeopardy?
People have problems, like I just was not sympathetic,
Right. She's very wealthy, family is wealthy.
Yeah.
But also she was never held to account by any authority that she had to have face-to-face contact with.
Right. Not yet.
Right.
And
she dealt with other characters who were like, oh, you're in a bit of a pickle, and they help her kind of strategize about how she can solve her problem. But she's never face-to-face with some Imperial Reckoning Commission saying, how could you have lost this amount of funding? What are you doing? What's happening in your finances? We're going to find out.
Even as she's in the Senate, right, doing her thing, bad mouthing the emperor. No debate. There's nobody taking the other side. There's no conflict. There's no jeopardy. Like, this could have been written so much more interesting.
She's just reading it into the record.
Yeah, she's just like, oh, it's not right what you're doing, and basic human rights, and blah, 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 blah.
Blah, blah, blah.
Nobody cares, Nobody cares. You're just a talking head with a lot of money you never earned. It's all family money anyway. So, you know what I mean? Like, it just... But I want to make a prediction though.
Yes.
I want this to go on the record.
By all means.
The husband, right, who is supposedly like just
they're on the outs.
What's that?
They're on the outs.
Yeah, they're on the outs. She disapproves. He's got a secret gambling habit, apparently, right? He drinks squigs in his martinis, and that's not cool because they're live animals, or who knows? I mean, whatever those little things were. And he's so bad he has two of them instead of just one, but preferably
he's got a problem.
None. What's that?
He has a problem.
So he's playing the deep con. All right. They allude to him being 16 years old and being a firebrand. And somebody says how much he's changed since then. To me, the perfect cover for giving away your money is gambling.
Oh, but
gambling losses, right?
They exposed that. They did that because they knew that the chauffeur would be listening in. And she very vocally said, I can't believe you told me you wouldn't gamble anymore. That was all for the chauffeur's benefit so that he would pass that story on to create the cover.
You think so?
Oh, yeah.
So I thought that was real. I thought that Mon Mothma was saying that to her husband and that they were unaware. But I thought that the husband was aware.
No, the husband's unaware. The husband's like, what are you talking about? I stopped gambling. You're wrong. So he was speaking from a position of being genuinely outraged, insulted when, he had cleaned up his act, but she's using him to make sure that the chauffeur hears it.
So I think that's going on, but I also think that he actually has his own agenda where he's giving money to the rebels by losing at gambling, and that he knew that the chauffeur was listening, because he even says at one point he can't hear us.
Yes, right.
But I'm thinking that next season we're going to find out, or at some point we're going to find out that no, he had to have this subterfuge and kind of disconnect with his wife the whole time in order to protect her and his family. But at the end, they're going to get together and be like, well, we were both closet rebels the whole time. Happily ever after,
Yeah, I think that's
I think that's a setup.
That's a reasonable supposition.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I can enjoy the show for what it is. It's a fine show. My only knock is the one we gave, which is it bogs down in parts. The writing could be sharpened up. Andor's not particularly interesting as a character, because really it's not. I mean, he's the titular character, but he's not that interesting.
He doesn't move.
No, and he's a very one-dimensional character with that consistent expression and very consistent set of lines that he uses over and over again. The only reason we care about him, or me, is because I know he's eventually going to play an important part in a much bigger story.
Mm.
If it was about him and you didn't know anything else, would you really care about him?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, because really, Luthen's a far more interesting character than Andor is. If there was a Luthen show, I would watch that.
Luthen is Winston Churchill, right? The scene where he's talking to Saw and he says to Saw, it's up to you. I wish you didn't have to make this choice, but do we sacrifice Krieger and and Forrest Whitaker's character? Saw says, and 30 good men and Krieger, he says, so it's like, it's like, are we going to sacrifice them and play the long game? Or are we going to let the Empire know that we're onto them? Or are we going to let them think they got him? And now we're going to be free, the whole playing field. He says, we have a clear playing field. If we let these 31 people die, and not call back the attack. And that's Winston Churchill and Coventry, right? Do we let the Nazis know that we broke their code, or do we let them have a successful attack, and destroy, a city?
So, I mean, from that perspective, there's complexity going on, political complexity, moral complexity. I just keep coming back to the same thing. I'm like, okay, that's a good show, but is it Star Wars?
What? There's this one scene though, where Cyril is talking over the intercom. Like I said, he was in his nightshirt, and the sergeant has this broken up transmission. I thought that was really fun. They could have just had a regular old conversation. But
yeah. I know the scene. Yes.
He's like, there's a smelter, behind me. I thought you'd want to know. Oh, yes. And he's answering questions wrong, but the message is getting through.
Yes.
And I thought that was wonderful. I knew you'd want to know, sir.
No, I like that scene too.
was a really well done. I mean, that was really clever writing.
I agree.
And good use of character, because the character, the sergeant, who I don't know if he's still a sergeant, whatever he's doing now, obviously he's working, in industrial capacity. He's breaking up, and he's not like the most together guy anyway, right? We know he likes to drink a lot. And then Cyril, he's like, give me information. He's trying to get all this, he's been doing it through his work and everything, but he can't find it. And then the mother's in the background, and she has this great line. She says, "The mystery of your former triumphs has been vanquished. I can peacefully rest now." The mystery of your former triumphs has been vanquished, because he's going to act on this like broken transmission, former relationship with, she doesn't understand any of it. No. But like, she's like, just go to your new job and be like a bureaucrat and make some money and rise through the ranks and, be like a normal citizen, right? But instead he's going to like ruin his career. And I had this great moment. There was this great moment where Cyril is at the new job and he's in the cubicle, right? And they kind of like flash out. The camera's tight on him, and then it's medium distance, and then it's long distance. And it reminded me almost like of a Coin on a Scotsy kind of cog in the machine kind of feel.
I thought Gattaca.
I thought The Matrix too. I thought of Thomas Anderson, like when the Imperials come and Cyril's working at his thing, and then he looks up and he sees 3 people in uniforms. And I thought, Mr. Anderson. That's totally what I thought,
Yep.
But Gattaca is a really good one. I haven't watched that movie in a long time. I remember really enjoying that movie.
So interestingly, I saw it in the theater when it came out. I had the same memory. I really enjoyed it. And then it was on TV a couple of years ago. Rewatched it. Does not hold up.
Doesn't hold up.
Not as good as you remember.
Yeah. Well, I guess I remembered the good parts, or maybe I imagined them.
Yeah, the ending is really bad. It's almost like they ran out of money.
Well, it's the launch, right?
Even before that, my memory was much better than reality. But I was probably 28 when that movie came out.
Yeah.
You get older, things change.
Hey, we got to meet Melshi. His buddy from Rogue One. We get to meet him. He's the guy in the prison that's like, we're never getting out of here. And Loy is like, shut up. And he keeps putting him back in line. So, and he's the one that when they finally do escape, and they get caught in that like sticky web, and there's those 2 like aliens like, oh, the Imperials ruined our fishing grounds, those squigglies don't come around no more, they talk in that kind of broken English. It's kind of like that Yoda-esque kind of like.
Neither I nor my wife could understand exactly what they were saying most of the time. We're like, what just happened? Like, yeah. I'm not really sure.
It was
what happened was they made friends.
Closed captioning came in handy at that point. Let me just
I see. I didn't have that, but that scene was a very Star Wars scene. Yeah, that was.
They make the break for it. They're gonna like try to steal the ship, and they get caught in the web. I just thought that was genius.
Right, and it was kind of funny. And
it was really fun. It was meant to be really funny. I think
there's no humor in Andor.
There's very little.
That's probably one of the only moments in the entire. And this is again what I'm saying, that there are certain things you expect from a Star Wars story, and like Rogue One. Rogue One had elements of comedy sprinkled here and there in appropriate ways.
Yeah, K2SO.
K2SO. Most of his lines,
hilarious.
Almost all of his lines were laugh lines.
Yes. And his actions too. He's talking. The grenade's about to go off. He's talking some more. The grenade, wait, it's getting higher in pitch. And then it explodes just out of range and kills a couple of stormtroopers at that moment too. Because he is a tactical droid. He knew that was going to happen.
He was a great character. When I rewatched it after years after I saw the movie, I'd forgotten he was really very good character. His lines were great, but yeah. So Andor has none of that. There are times when, boy, the show could really benefit from some comic relief, you know, just a little. And that,
I think that's what the mother was for too. Although I don't think
really,
I don't think it was as
it
effective as it should have been.
was
But I
quite,
think that we were supposed to laugh at those scenes. But I just felt pity for poor.
She was a badass. I mean, she was a competent, independent woman who made her own way in the world without a man. And I didn't feel any humor about really any of those interactions that she had.
Gotcha.
But yeah, and then the final episode, which I thought was, you know, really building up to an action sequence that would top the original Ferrex battle where the corporate guards got humiliated. It didn't really come. You know, there was some action, but really not a lot. There was no pulse pounding, edge of your seat, what's going to happen next kind of stuff.
There were a couple moments there that I really liked, though. I mean, obviously the moment after the credits when we see like what they were building, you know, and we finally get the payoff. You watched the end after the credits of the last episode?
I'm not sure I did. Did I miss something really key?
Yeah. Do you want
to? You better tell me.
So we see those like multi-spoked things that like they were all like cranking and they were
what they were building in the prison.
Yeah.
Oh, you find out what it's for.
Yeah.
I did not know. No, I missed it.
I can't believe it. So you want me to tell you?
Yeah, of course.
You can guess probably.
I don't know.
So they show a couple robots, these little like kind of spider robots, and they're carrying this. They like flip one over and they put it down on this panel. And you can see kind of a starscape behind them. So they're in space. They're in orbit somewhere. And then they're building, and it's kind of like a hexagon that they.
Are they building part of the Death Star? Is that it? Yeah. Okay. No, I missed that entirely.
Not just part of the Death Star, but the targeting system. So the Death Star is here, and then there's a bunch of components and almost like an exploded diagram of like a lens or something. It's a graphic representation of an exploded diagram, and it's the targeting.
So that's very interesting, because there was a point when they were in the prison doing the manufacturing that I thought, I wonder if, you know, we're going to find out this is some important component, or if it doesn't matter because it's mindless work and it could be, you know, any machine that the Empire is. It could be maybe they're making walkers, you know, and any of the weapon systems that the Empire is in constant need of. So yeah, I'm not terribly surprised it was a component of the Death Star.
So that's one, and then that's like the ultimate payoff. But then there's a great scene where the rioters are rioting, and you're wondering why the Imperials are holding back, right? Like, well, first of all, tactically stupid, right? The lieutenant or whoever the officer is saying, hold the line. It's like, no. Let a couple of them through, beat the heck out of them, then let a couple more through, beat the heck out of them, then let a couple more. You know what I mean? Like, if you're like a controlled, like if you're using like Roman or Greek tactics with a shield wall, that's what you do. You don't just hold the shield wall. I mean, that's stupid. Somebody's eventually got to figure out to lob a grenade over the top, which happens. But before that happens, they've got snipers everywhere. Finally, a couple stormtroopers open fire, and we get to be one of the stormtroopers. So there's a shot where they show a stormtrooper shooting, but then we're standing right next to him, and we're looking at him pick off like people, and it's like, oh, finally, they show competent fire from suppression fire from stormtroopers.
Well, they're competent because the people that are on the receiving end dying are not major characters that you care about.
Right. That's a good point. It's a really good point. Although a couple of them are. And then at one point we see a stormtrooper shoot a woman, an older woman, in the leg, instead of like giving her a kill shot, which I don't know if that's Disney. I don't know what that was.
I was going to say it is Disney.
But it's like, you know, and at one point, Andor's running down a hallway and he like jacks up this patrolman. You know, he's not a stormtrooper. He's in like regular guard, but he's obviously like a trooper. He's got a pistol. He's doing a patrol, and he shoots him up, and he shoots him like he just shoots him dead, like right in the chest. And I thought, Well, they really wanted to make Andor like ruthless. That would have been a woman.
Mm-hmm.
They would have had a female, like a small, frail, small framed female, like trooper. And he would have like, but you can't do that. So,
Well, and again, Star Wars is bloodless violence.
Usually. So the other thing you got is Cyril goes to Miro's aid. He like his love. He actually, there's a scene where he stalks her outside
I know.
the ISB.
I was gonna.
How
that was
weird was that?
That was one thing I was going to bring up. Is they at the end they make his character very creepy.
Yes.
And she's creeped out, and she's like, "If you ever come near me again,
Yeah. Do you know how much trouble you're in right now?
Yeah.
But she's like, she does get that undercurrent. She reacts to it as if like it is a sexual advance or romantic advance, because she does say, if you pursue any of this, right? Not just the line of questioning about Andor, any of this, including herself, I think is implied in that, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And on the catwalk going into the, the entryway to the ISB. But then later, which again, Star Wars, everything's up in the sky. There's no safety issue.
With no railings.
Oh my gosh, man. I'm
Never.
terrified to work anywhere around there. And then
the OSHA violations against the Empire must be.
Oh yeah, OSHA doesn't exist in the Empire. So, but he comes to her rescue, and they're in like this storeroom or something after he pulls her off the street, and she's got like a weapon, like an improvised weapon at his throat. And she's all like adrenaline up. And then she says, and she's breathing on him. Like they're like this close, and she's breathing on him. So that's sexual. It's a sexual, it's an intense moment of, we just got out of violence. The adrenaline's up. You're like, are they going to kiss? What's going to happen here? Of course, they're not going to kiss. But like,
no, I never thought that.
That sexual tension is there because she says, I suppose I should thank you. And he says, no need to, or something like that. I can't remember the exact line. And, they're like embraced. They're in an embrace. Very interesting dynamic there. And then they show Cass, and then they have a quick release to Cassian and Bix, his old girlfriend. And he's holding her, and they're carrying them out. So there's the reflection of the Imperial love and then the rebel love. And I thought, wow, that was a nice choice.
That's interesting. I didn't really, it didn't hit me that way, but I can see that. And the tension between the Imperial operations officer and the wannabe, it's creepy because they're both awful, so they're
irredeemable human beings.
Right, both of them, and
they're going to make irredeemable babies someday.
Right.
This is how Imperials mate.
you don't want to see anything of a romantic nature take place between them at all.
It would be like watching scorpions do it. It's like, this has got to be, no good ending could come from this.
Exactly.
No happy ending, I should say.
Yeah.
Sorry. No, that's like, that's rough. Cinta, right? The cold love interest from Aldhani, of Vel, the commander, and she like stabs for whatever reason. I mean, this is just like, why are they making this character so cruel? She takes a knife that's only this long and stabs an Imperial and like shoves it into his chest cavity. And then later she's back at the hotel or the room that she rented or whatever, and they're packing to go. And Vel says to Cinta, oh, you're hurt. You have blood. And she's like, it's nothing. It's nothing. She's like, no, it's blood. And she says, it's not mine.
Right. The funny thing was, I mouthed that line before she delivered it.
Did you?
Yeah.
I didn't. That was a complete surprise to me. That's awesome. Good for you, man.
No, I don't know why I knew she was going to say that.
That's great.
But that
was an unexpected moment for me.
It's like adult Star Wars. What if Star Wars took place in the real world that hadn't been sanitized for kids?
Yeah.
And Andor is much more like that. But again, I keep coming back to the same thing and saying, there are many points at which I'm watching this with fantastic actors, delivering well-crafted lines. And I'm just thinking, I don't think this is what I really want from Star Wars.
Yeah. It's well, so we were talking about Skarsgård's speech and being a little too long, but when he talks about how he sacrifices love, there's a tie-in at the end. So we get the Imperial love, we get the Rebel love, and then we cut to Skarsgård, and he's looking down an alley, and he's looking at the continued gunfire. There's still continued laser fire, and the fighting, and he has no one. He's just standing there by himself, and he's got that look on his face, like, what hell have I wrought? This is my doing. These people are dying as a direct result of my actions.
Well, I definitely get the feeling about his character that while he talks a good game and he speaks with great certainty, that he's trying to convince himself a lot of the time. I get that sense, because how could anybody be so certain unless they're fanatic? A reasonable person could never be completely sure that what they were unleashing was the right thing to do.
And we need more of his backstory. We need to know why, what is so hopefully they'll explore some of that later. But the final scene where Cassian, well, actually before that, when Cassian puts Bix and the other survivors of his like friend group and B onto that whatever transport, and they're going to take off, and he gives instructions, make sure you fly over the water, and then you go up and then do this, and that's and he make sure they get out of here, and B's like, what do you do, why aren't you coming with us, and Bix is still half catatonic, but she says he'll find us, and it's an ambiguous line, because you don't know if she's talking about Luthen finding them,
right? So
she has to say Cassian will find us.
Mm-hmm.
And then Cassian says, I will find you. And that's the moment. Okay. So that's the moment when Cassian stops being the selfish bastard and becomes a leader, right? This is the first inkling that he has that selflessness in him, because he's worried about his friends. And now we don't know what he's going to do, but we don't think he's going to run away.
Right.
But he has some unfinished business that they can't attend to. And then he meets up with Luthen, and he said he says, kill me or let me join.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that was kind of a really good moment, to cliffhanger moment, keep them together, even though it's not a true cliffhanger because he smiles and it's resolved. But when he says, he actually goes in, and there's this tough guy exchange where he says, you came here to kill me, didn't you? And Luthen says, you don't make it easy.
Yeah.
Right? So it's that old, like, I respect your violence, I respect your tough guy. Yeah. And he says, what game is this? He says, no game. Like, kill me or let me in, right? And or take me in. And then he kind of relents, and he smiles, and then that's it. That was a really nice denouement. That was a really nice denouement. I thought they did a good job. One last thing, though.
I haven't killed my Disney Plus subscription yet, so I'm going to have to go queue up the last episode so that I can see that post-credit scene that I completely missed.
Oh, call me after you're done with that. And then the other thing I wanted to talk about was another great moment was Forrest Whitaker. When he says, when they're having when he's like, you got spies everywhere. Who is it? Who's the spy here? Right. And then he says it's Tubes. And that character was in Rogue One too. He was remember, like his door guy. Yeah. He was the entree when they were bringing in the pilot, and they were going to like torture the pilot, which was a really weird thing to do. And then the pilot's okay. But anyway, that was for convenience sake. But he has this line where he says, I want to find it, the exact line, because I thought it was really good writing. That's it. He says, Saw Gerrera, they're going to sacrifice him. He says, Saw's all paranoid. He says, 30 men. 30 men we're going to sacrifice. And Luthen says, plus Krieger. He says, Saw says, for the greater good. I wish I could do his voice. For the greater good. He's got that kind of like plaintive, kind of like sing-songy, kind of for the greater good. And he's got a breathlessness to it. Like he's already got that asthma that he's going to have later in Rogue One for whatever reason.
Right.
And so he says, for the greater good. And Luthen says, call it what you will. And he says, let's call it war. Right? Let's call it war. Mm-hmm. And that's interesting because Guerrera is obviously a riff on guerra, which is Spanish for war, you know? I mean, Star Wars names, sometimes they're just stupid, you know? Sometimes they actually have a little bit of meaning, you know? Just kind of interesting.
There's usually a pattern. It's usually first name is one syllable, second name is two syllables. Guerrera having three syllables is very unusual as a Star Wars name.
Interesting.
Well, so is Skywalker, but every other character, all the aliens, it's always one syllable, two syllables.
Yeah. Well, Skywalker, I mean, Luke, obviously, George Lucas. So, like, that was pretty obvious. But, like, Solo, because he's a loner, except he's not. He's got Chewie with him. And then, of course, in the Solo movie, they do the derivation of that. But, like, some of them, like, there's a character who's like a Jedi. Her name's Barriss Offee. I don't know if you know this. It's from one of the animated series. And I'm thinking, George Lucas, he's sitting in a Starbucks, he's writing the script, and he's going, I need a name. What's that called when you serve coffee? A barista. Okay, I'll call her Barriss. What does she serve? Coffee. Oh, I'll just leave the C off. We'll call her Offee. Barriss Offee. There you go. I got a name. You know, it's like, some of it's just like so.
I bet if I went online right now and Googled Star Wars name generator, I bet I'd find one.
Oh no, there's tons of them. There's tons of them. Yeah. Well, I think we've like beaten this. I don't know.
I think so.
Yeah, we've really gotten this one down, I think.
Yeah.
We beat this droid, which is what they do, to death. Not to death, but beyond repair. Yeah.
We just got to wait for the next series. So there's another Mandalorian coming.
Yeah, there's a Mandalorian coming. Right now, the Bad Batch is on episode 4, will be this week. I don't know if you watched the Bad Batch.
No, I draw the line at the
anime.
The shows usually.
Animation.
But we have coming up, there's a new live action one. The female with the two things. What's her name? She was in the last Mandalorian, Ahsoka, right?
Oh, Ahsoka. Is that coming out soon?
I think so, yeah.
This year?
I'm not sure, but I think that's the next one that's going to be out.
Okay, interesting.
So
yeah, at first I didn't like Ahsoka. When she was introduced in the Clone Wars, another mouthy like teenager and irreverent, you know, and then her character started growing me. So by the time she's in The Mandalorian and they're doing that like Asian riff, you know, where they go to the town. Oh, and Michael Biehn is in it from Aliens. He's like on the parapet and he's like the security guy for the the Asian lady who gives the Mandalorian the Beskar steel staff.
Yes.
You know, spear. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was a pretty cool episode. I like that a lot.
Yeah, I did too. That was good.
All right, my friend. Well, I think we're done here.
Okay. Good talking to you, Pat.
Yeah, always good.
Ready to talk anytime. Could be on any topic.
And we'll see everyone on the next one. I'm going to stop recording.